Morning, Rory. How are you?
Morning, Peter. Yes, I'm all good, thank you. It's a nice bright morning, so that always puts me in a
Yeah,
good mood.
absolutely. The sun is shining, Rory, and it's great to see you. Thanks very much for taking the time to chat with me today. Welcome to the Business Spotlight. Could we start? Could you tell me a little about yourself, your background, and your business, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now I own Modern Office Supplies, or MOS, as I like to call it. But before that, I was in corporate PR, where I worked mainly with the Lanyon Group. Worked with some very, very good people. Really enjoyed that world. And actually, the only reason I left it was because I had this opportunity through a family friend to purchase MOS, and would sort of started as a bit of a joke. Sort of, oh, would Rory like it? And then we got to the point where it was like, you know what, let's do it. And it just gave me the opportunity to at an early age, I was 25, to own a business and sort of put the feelers out and see what that was like. And it was a well-established business. I mean, it's been trading since the 50s. So there's pressure there not to mess it up, but equally it's Northern Ireland. If it's a good reputation, then generally it remains that way. But yeah, no, so I've been at that about 8 years now, and it's yeah, it's good. It gives me something to do anyway.
So a lot of people wouldn't see the natural transition from PR to business owner of MOS. So where you said about a family connection, what was I guess, did you always envisage owning your own business?
Not necessarily. I think a few years into the PR world, I sort of had the idea, um, maybe someday I'll go down that route and open a big agency or something like that. Um, but it sort of just was all far sooner than I expected, and it was a good friend of my dad's, and very, very sort of good fella, a guy called Roger Curry, and he had run this for a long, long time. He took it over from his father, and his kids are all sort of doctors or teachers or working for the Treasury in London, and so he had no real succession, and I think was sort of looking away to pass it on, and as I say, we just had a quick word about it, and then after a while, the idea appealed to me, and it was my dad who's always been he was his own boss, and he has always been very like, you only get one life, just jump in, go for it, and I thought, yeah, why not?
And it's interesting at one stage, coming out of COVID, I guess it was common in the press to hear about, oh, office space. It's all about home working and so on. But it seems, from my perspective, I've seen an awful lot of a resurgence
Mm.
in office space as it would have been pre-COVID. Give me your insights on that, Rory.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there was a bit of a semi-panic when that all happened. I mean, you look, equally, they've been saying for about 10 years that, we're going to go paperless and there's not going to be any consumption of office supplies and things like that. One thing we've always tried to do, and especially since I've come in, is just diversify our offering. So, when that all happened, we sort of said, right, let's put together a pack for, employees of companies that do want to work from home, small desks. We looked into hand sanitizer, everything that we could have sold, we sold, because that's something that we do. Basically, we offer that full package to clients. If they want anything, we'll get it. Um, since then, yes, you're right. There's definitely been a rollout back to the office. I think there's a bit of a split, where a lot of people really enjoyed the home working because it worked for them in terms of flexibility. Equally, there's a lot of people who decided, no, I'm not getting enough out of the job working from home because I don't have my colleagues around me. There's no chance for brainstorming. There's no chance for sort of that social interaction that people need on a daily basis. And I think that is a big driver for bringing people back to the office. In terms of Belfast itself, there's a lot of good space out there, and it's a fraction of the price of Dublin or London. And certainly, as we've seen over the last 10 years, a lot of the big American companies see it as a great opportunity to open up hubs, and whether it's cybersecurity or whatever. And um, there's a huge number of skilled workers in Northern Ireland, and definitely, that will always drive sort of office space being taken up, and thank goodness for it from our perspective.
And help me understand your target market. Who do you enjoy working with, and who benefits most from
Mm.
dealing with MOS?
Well, so I mean, we deal with individuals, private individuals. We deal with blue chip companies and everything in between. I mean, I'd be tempted to say our ideal target is anyone who pays their bills on time. Um, but no, look, it's a tricky one because on the one hand, when you get like a sort of a larger company who place quite large orders at once on a monthly basis, and that's one delivery and it's out there and it's uncomplicated, that's great. Equally, a lot of our best customers are family owned, smaller businesses like ourselves who are extremely loyal and as I say, do pay their bills on time and you know give us that. So there isn't really a nailed down idea of a perfect client. Because we are so diverse in what we sell, our client base is extremely diverse as a result. And I couldn't pigeonhole one type of customer or another. Um, just, we'd prefer not to send a box of paper clips out to Enniskillen. That's,
Yeah, what? That's outrageous.
I know.
Oh, very good. And what about, so if you reflect back on the 8 years of owning the business, what would you say has been your biggest lesson?
Oh, I mean, I suppose it's making sure everyone's on the same page. When I came in, it was partly an advantage. There were people who'd been at the company 20, 30, 40 years. And I mean 40 years, there's a guy who retired only a couple of years ago, and I think he'd been at MOS since he was sort of 16 and was there about 45, 46 years, which is incredible. It's a testament to the company. But with that comes experience and comes know-how. With it also comes existing habits that are sometimes difficult to break. And I think realistically, if I could take myself back to the beginning, what I would do is maybe be a bit more assertive on that, but and just implement the way I want to do things with everybody from the start. But look, equally, I was 25 years old. I was coming in. Some guys had been at the company longer than I'd been alive, so it's difficult to just sort of stamp your foot down and go, listen, guys, and I would be very conscious of not being one of those do what I say kind of owners. I much prefer the approach of let's talk about it, let's see what we can work out here. And again, so far, our staff turnover hasn't really um been very big. We've had a couple of people who've left purely out of retirement, and I've brought a couple of people in who are still here. So uh, but definitely that sort of investment in people and looking at the approach and how you sort of implement change, that's a big one for me.
And what about if you think about, if you look inward, what have you learned about yourself along the way?
Um, Probably that I'm far too soft to touch. No, okay, again, I think I was pleased with myself that I was able to come in and sort of make decisions and back myself on them. I'd only been in the working world for sort of 4 years at that point. So my experience was limited. But equally through agency PR, I got a broad idea of how other companies operate, and again, big companies, commercial property firms, all that kind of thing. Um, so I suppose just it's sometimes hard to take you know learnings about yourself. But yeah, I mean, I think I realized that the work-life balance is so important to me. And I've always been very much with my employees. If they've something to do with their kids or their grandkids, I'll make an exception. Go and do it because it's more important than work sometimes. And um, suppose when I was in PR, I maybe it sounds ridiculous because I'm a business owner who wants to make the most out of his business, but I suppose I was probably more ambitious and more eager to sort of reach certain heights. Whereas now, comfortable life and I'll be happy.
And what about who's influenced you along your journey? Who's influenced you the most?
Um, well, I mean, I sort of touched on my dad being one of the reasons, that I sort of jumped into the whole thing. I mean, he was a big influence. He was a sort of property developer, worked on smaller properties, a few houses here and there and everywhere. And as I say, the fact that he was around and always there for us, watching rugby matches, watching cricket matches, and things like that, that was a big influence in terms of the decision I made. In business, there was a member of our rugby club, a guy called Michael Howard, who had been with the SHS group for a long time, and I mean he's just a juggernaut. He actually advised me on buying MOS, and he's someone I would be very comfortable asking questions about business to, because he's been there and done that. I mean, I think in the early 90s he became managing director of the SHS Group and took them from about 50 million turnover to about 400 million come this early 2010s. So, he knows all about that kind of expansion, the diversification, and everything like that. And if I ever would have to refer back to someone, I suppose that would be it. And I like to keep it on a local level because people might sort of go for the yearbook answer, Steve Jobs or Richard Branson or whatever, but Northern Ireland is a different place. And especially if you're doing business here specifically, you know, it's easier to look within Northern Ireland at influences there or here.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people, funnily enough, a year or so ago would have maybe said Elon Musk. He got mentioned a lot more a while ago than he does now for whatever reason. I've no idea why.
Yeah, he's a
So,
bit
so,
mad.
so 8 years down the line, Rory, so what gets you out of bed in the morning and drives your passion for the business?
I suppose my family. I have a young family. I have two small kids, and I want to make their life as good as possible. Equally, like as much as I said I'm not as ambitious as I maybe was when I was in PR, there's always a drive to do better. Just as a competitive person, I always played very competitive sport, and I always think if you're not pushing to be as good as you can be. And it doesn't matter what I was doing. If I was, you know, working in a park for the council, I'd be wanting to do the best job I could. If I was, it sort of doesn't matter. It's just that internal competition. I think that when I wake up, right, let's make this day as good as it can be. And it's, you know, I think that's what drives most people. I don't like to look at other companies, for example. I don't necessarily like to look at competitors and say, oh, they're doing this, so maybe I should be doing that, because they might be in a totally different situation, whether that's with cash flow or establishment or whatever. And the easiest thing for me is to say, right, here's my goal. I want to be here. Let's try and do that within the next year, 2 years, whatever.
And what about if you were stranded on a desert island, even Rathlin Island in that picture behind you? If you
So,
if you could pick either a book to read, podcast to listen to, either or both even, what would you recommend, or what would you go for?
Um, I mean, you're probably hoping I'll say some sort of business related book or podcast or whatever. Look, I love history, so I love history books. I love sort of Cornwells and things like that. But there's nothing sort of jumps out at me as, do you know what, probably out of nostalgia, The Hobbit. I would take The Hobbit with me. It was something that my dad read to me and my mum read to me when I was a kid, and I've always read it. And when my son isn't 2.5, when he's a bit older, I'll probably read it to him as well. Podcast wise, anything rugby related, generally, I'm pretty happy. I'm loving that Donncha O'Callaghan and Tommy Bowe podcast at the minute. It's really entertaining. Um, I'm a big sort of man for Audible, for an audiobook as well. So, anything David Mitchell's written, normally I'll sit and listen to if I'm driving somewhere. And anything that makes me chuckle, I'm happy with.
And what's the biggest challenge that you're currently facing in business?
I think every small company, is facing huge challenges at the minute. And then with Labour sort of coming in and the budget and the new national insurance, I mean, we're lucky that we don't have a huge workforce. With this the national insurance increase, will be a hit. Margins in general we're already being squeezed. It's one thing I'm constantly getting at my guys for, because our clients love them because they never raise prices, but our prices are constantly going up. There's a myriad of factors. I mean, it's never been quite the same since Brexit. It's you've obviously COVID hit everything, and then you've got the war in Ukraine, which believe it or not, um, a lot of paper was coming from America, but what we didn't know until the war broke out was that half of America's paper mills are in Russia. So,
Really? That's-
yeah, so there, there's it's not so bad now, but for a long time there was a bit of a shortage, and like I mean, paper price doubled, and um, it's the usual thing that all businesses face, increasing costs, and even we've vehicles on the road, so increased insurance, everything like that. It's a perfect storm of, right, can we see this out? But so far so good, and we're doing our best to sort of cope with it without raising the prices on our clients, and forcing them into positions that are making it untenable for them to use us. Because again, there's always someone bigger than you who can do it slightly cheaper, but we really rely on our service and our personal touch, and the fact that if you want something brought up to the fourth floor and given to you know Beth at that desk, we'll do it.
Mm.
And we can do it because we're not using a courier. We have our own drivers and everything like that. So we're sort of, we work on the basis that hopefully that service and everything will garner loyalty from our clients.
And complete left field then. So if you could invite any three people, alive or dead, to a dinner party, who would you invite?
Um, do you know what? I'm terribly socially awkward. I'd probably just rather have dinner by myself watching a wee series. But no, do you know what? If someone can make me chuckle, I would just hate the idea of sitting with somebody who hates me, or you know um, doesn't want to say anything. So probably like I always wanted to meet Leslie Nielsen before he passed away, and I think he would keep you chuckling throughout. It's a bit of a random one, but and then actually, but my mum's father, my grandfather, he passed away when I was about 15, and all that my parents say is that he was a real character, and I'd love to chat to him as an adult, because
Yeah.
obviously loved him as a kid, but never really got that same interaction. And equally, from a business standpoint, he was managing director of the Northern Bank back in the day, and you know, president of the rugby club, and he was a great orator and could speak very well, and used to sort of do good after dinners and things like that. So I think he'd be great. And then to be honest, another Ricky Gervais, let's say that. Again, just keep me laughing, keep things controversial.
Yeah, Ricky Gervais seems to be a bit more. I think he's fantastic. So it's great to
Mm,
meet another fellow fan. I think he's
absolutely.
absolute genius. So that'll
Yeah.
be a good night. I would try and gate crash that night, to be fair. And what about if you could go back in time and dish out some advice to your 18-year-old self, Rory?
Hmm.
What would that sound like?
Um, don't be an idiot. That was a kid at 18. No, okay. I could probably say don't be too self-conscious. Don't worry about what other people think. I think there was a big part of me was sort of, right, I must do everything by the book and the way society demands, and this and that and the other. And I might tell myself not to go to uni. I went to Queens, and don't get me wrong, I had a good time, but when I came out, it was still difficult to get a job. I actually ended up in PR because I did. My brother-in-law is a lawyer, and he got me a placement at his law firm, and I met sort of my future boss and things like that. So it all was a bit lucky that way. But I mean, I look at it now and I think, well, flip, if I was 18, I might go and get a trade and build up a business that way as well, because we're at that point now where there's not many young tradespeople, and if you have a bit of business head on your shoulders, you could make a very nice living. So it's a bit left field, but something like that perhaps.
Yeah, no, very good. Great share. And what about, let's fast forward instead of looking back, let's look forward. So 5 years down the line, 2030, what
Mhm.
does MOS look like then?
Well, I mean, one thing since I came in, the very first thing, because I'd always did a little bit of furniture, and when I came in, I said, well, here, it's a lot easier to sell 50 grand's worth of furniture than it is 50 grand's worth of stationery. So I've been pushing that side of the business quite hard, to the point that, like that's why I started referring to us as MOS as opposed to Modern Office Supplies, because MOS covers everything, whereas the other one sounds just like a stationer. I updated the website to look much more sort of like furniture fit out and that side of things. And we've been doing some lovely big jobs. I mean, we did 11th floor of the Vantage building in town, which was a sort of a a love-hate relationship because it was a great job to get, but equally some of our stuff didn't fit in the lift. So our team carrying things, including myself, carrying things up 11 flights was tricky. But I'd love to keep going down that route and keep getting those jobs and being at the centre of a lot of the building that's going on in Belfast and Northern Ireland as a whole. Um, there are some really nice spaces, and I take a great interest in making sure the client is always delighted with what they have. It's not just about getting that sale; it's about making sure they're happy. And if in 5 years, we're pushing some of the bigger boys, and really getting in front of them on jobs, I mean, we're winning some jobs off them at the minute, but if we can just step in front and be considered, peers amongst them, I'll be happy with that.
And if someone likes what they've heard, Rory, and would like to reach out and get in touch with you or the business, what's the best way for them to go about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, email's probably the best because of the young kids. Sometimes I'll not be answering my phone if I'm putting someone to sleep. But just Rory RORYM at mosni.co.uk, and that's the best way. I'll get back to you straight away.
Brilliant. Well, Rory McCurry from MOS, thanks very much for taking the time to chat with me today. Great story and some fantastic shares there. So thank you again for your time, and I wish you every
Thank you.
success for the future. So Rory, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much, Peter.